Show feelings and emotions very clearly. They really make a face look alive and real. When you look at a portrait, your own eyes usually go to the eyes in the drawing first. How to draw good eyes will make all your artwork much better. It is like the most expressive part of mastering them is a very rewarding skill. Think about your favorite portraits or drawings of characters. The eyes in those pictures probably stand out. Sometimes eyes can look thoughtful, as if the person is deep in thought, or they might look surprised by something. This is because the artist who drew them really knew the person looking at the art. They create a special kind of bond between the viewer and the artwork. It is a skill that takes time to develop fully, but it is realistic eyes. We will go through all the steps together, one by one. We will start with very easy and simple shapes as our foundation. Then slowly, you will learn all about drawing the eyelids, the iris, which is the colored part, and even the tiny eyelashes. It's like building something interesting. If you carefully follow all of the steps outlined here. Drawing eyes can seem hard when you are just starting out, but please don't worry about that at all. The beginner. With consistent practice and patience, you will definitely get much better over time. This guide uses very simple words and short sentences. Soon you will be drawing eyes that look so real, they might seem to look right back at you. So, get your pencil and some paper ready to go. To draw good eyes, we always begin with some basic shapes. The main shape for an eye is not a perfect circle like a ball. It is actually much more like the shape of an almond. You can also think of a football shape, but imagine it being a bit wider in the middle part. This almond shape is the general outline of the eye opening. It is the part where the round eyeball shows through the eyelids. You should try to sketch this almond shape very lightly on your paper first. Don't press down too hard with your pencil during these initial stages. Inside this almond shape that you just drew, we need to draw the eyeball itself. The eyeball is a sphere, which means it is round like a ball. However, when we look at an eye, we only see a part of this whole sphere, so we draw a circle inside the almond outline. This circle will be for the iris, which is the colored part of the eye. You need to make sure that this circle is not too small, and also not too big for the almond shape. It should gently touch the top and bottom parts of the almond shape, or sometimes it is slightly covered by them. Remember that eyes are not flat objects on a face. They are round spheres. Even though we are drawing a flat circle on our paper for the iris, try to always imagine it sitting on the surface of a round ball. This way of thinking will help you a lot later on when we start to add shading and highlights. For now, just focus on getting the basic almond shape and the circle inside it correct. These are your most important building blocks for the eye. We will add many more details to these simple shapes as we go. This first step is very, very important. You should practice drawing this almond shape and the circle inside it many times. Try making them in different sizes to see how they look. It is a good idea to look at photographs of real eyes. See how the almond shape can change from person to person. Sometimes it is very wide and open, other times it can be more narrow and squinted. The circle for the iris also changes its appearance a little bit depending on the angle. Getting these basic shapes correct is the solid foundation for any realistic eye drawing you want to create. When you are drawing two eyes on a face, they need to look like they belong together as a pair. This important idea is called symmetry. Symmetry means that the two eyes are balanced and look harmonious. They are not usually exactly the same, like a perfect mirror image of each other, but they are very, very similar in shape and size. The eyes should always be at the same height on the face. You can imagine a straight, invisible line going across the middle of the face. Both of your drawn eyes should sit neatly on this guideline. This helps to make the face look natural and believable. The distance between the two eyes is also a very important proportion to get right. Usually the space between the two eyes is about the same width as one single eye. So, if you draw one eye, you can imagine another eye of the same size fitting perfectly in the empty space between it and where the next eye will go. Some artists lightly sketch a third, temporary eye shape in the middle as a helpful guide. Then they erase this guide shape later on. This simple trick really helps to keep the proportions of the face looking correct and balanced. The size of the eyes should also be very similar to each other. One eye should not be noticeably much bigger or much smaller than the other eye. This is especially true if you are drawing a face that is looking straight at you. If the head is turned to the side, then one eye might look a little bit smaller because of perspective, but for a straightforward front view, always try to keep them about the same size. Pay close attention to your almond shapes. Are they similar enough? Are the irises you drew about the same size? Check these things carefully. Proportions in drawing are all about how different parts of the drawing relate to each other in size and placement. The eyes relate to the nose and the mouth. They also relate to the size and shape of the whole head. If the eyes you draw are too big for the head, the face might end up looking like a cartoon character. If they are drawn too small, the face might look a bit strange or off. It is always a good idea to look at real faces or good photographs, see how the eyes fit with the other features. This will help you understand good proportions. Eyelids are what give the eye its unique and characteristic shape. They are not just simple thin lines drawn around the eye. They actually have some thickness to them because they are folds of skin. The upper eyelid is usually more visible than the lower one. It often covers a small part of the very top of the iris. This detail makes the eye look more relaxed and natural, rather than wide and staring. You should draw a curved line just above your initial almond shape to represent this upper eyelid. Make it follow the curve of the eye. The lower eyelid is also very important for a realistic eye. It usually sits just below the iris, or sometimes it might slightly touch the bottom edge of it. The lower eyelid is typically less curved than the upper eyelid. It's often a bit flatter. Add a line for the lower eyelid below your almond shape. Remember to try and show its thickness. You can do this by drawing two lines very close together, especially for the lower lid area where it tends to catch the light. This simple technique gives it a more three-dimensional and believable look. There is also a small, often pinkish area in the inner corner of the eye, near the nose. This little part is called the tear duct, or sometimes the carbuncle. Don't forget to add this small but significant shape to your drawing. It's usually a small, rounded, or slightly triangular form. Adding the tear duct adds a surprising amount of realism to the eye. Take a moment to look at your own eyes in a mirror. You will see this feature clearly. Including these small details really does make a big difference in the final result. Eyelids also have creases or folds of skin associated with them. The upper eyelid nearly always has a visible crease above it. This line shows where the eyelid folds back when the eye is open. The shape and prominence of this crease can change a lot depending on the person's age, their ethnicity, or the expression on their face. You should sketch this crease in lightly above the upper eyelid. It should generally follow the same curve as the upper eyelid itself. These details help to make the eye look like it is properly set into the face, not just stuck on top like a sticker. Section 5. The colorful center drawing the iris. The iris is the beautiful colored part of the eye. It is basically a circle, but as we've learned, we often don't see the entire circle because of the eyelids. The eyelids usually cover the top part of the iris, and sometimes they cover a little bit of the bottom part too. Inside the iris, there is another, smaller circle. This inner circle is the pupil. The pupil is the very dark black center of the eye. Its job is to let light into the eye so we can see. You need to draw the pupil right in the middle of the iris. The size of the pupil can change quite a lot. It gets smaller when there is a lot of bright light around. It gets much bigger when you are in a dim or dark room. For a normal, relaxed look in your drawing, you can make the pupil about 1/3 to 1/2 the size of the entire iris. It is very important to make sure that the pupil is drawn as a perfectly round circle. Use a darker pencil shade or press harder for the pupil. It is usually the darkest part of the whole eye. This strong contrast helps make the eye really pop. The iris itself has interesting patterns and textures. It is not just one flat, solid color. It has many fine lines and complex textures within it. These lines often radiate out from the pupil towards the edge of the iris, a bit like the spokes on a bicycle wheel. Sometimes, the patterns can be more like little speckles, spots, or even wavy lines. Look very closely at photographs of different irises. You will see a huge variety of beautiful and intricate patterns. Lightly sketch these patterns into your drawing of the iris. Don't make them too dark or too obvious at first. Around the very outer edge of the iris, there is often a slightly darker ring. Drawing this darker outer ring can make the iris look more defined and make it stand out more. It adds a sense of depth to the colored part of the eye. The actual color of the iris can be anything: blue, green, brown, hazel, or gray. Even if you are drawing in black and white using only pencil, you can still show these different tones and values by using careful shading techniques. We will talk more about shading in the very next section of this guide. Section 6. Adding depth, shading, and highlights. Shading is what makes the eye in your drawing look round and three-dimensional, not flat. Remember, the eyeball is a sphere, so it should be shaded just like you would shade any other spherical object to make it look round. Usually the sides of the eyeball, the white part which is properly called the sclera, are a little bit darker than the very center part that faces forward. You should add some soft, light shading to the corners of the eye. Also, shade gently under the upper eyelid. This creates a subtle shadow from the eyelid falling onto the eyeball. The iris also needs careful shading to look realistic. The top part of the iris is often a bit darker than the bottom part. This is mainly because the upper eyelid casts a small shadow down onto it. The patterns that you drew inside the iris earlier can also be shaded to give them more depth and make them look less flat. Use different amounts of pressure with your pencil to create lighter and darker areas within the iris. Remember that the iris is not perfectly flat. It has a slight curve to its surface. Shading helps to show this gentle, convex form. Highlights are the very bright spots of light that you see reflected on the surface of the eye. They are super important because they make the eye look wet, shiny, and alive. The main highlight is usually found on the iris and sometimes overlaps onto the pupil as well. It is often a small, distinct dot or perhaps a softer, more diffused shape. This highlight comes directly from the main light source in the scene, like a window, a lamp, or the sun. Decide where your light is coming from, and then place the highlight accordingly. Keep this area pure, white paper. You can also add smaller, secondary highlights if you want to. Maybe there's a little gleam of light on the moist lower eyelid, or perhaps a soft reflection on the white part of the eye. However, try not to overdo the highlights with too many tiny spots. Usually, one or two strong, well-placed highlights are much more effective than many weak or distracting ones. You can create highlights by carefully erasing the graphite from the paper, or by planning ahead and leaving those areas of the paper white from the very beginning. Highlights are absolutely key for a lively, realistic eye. Section 7. Delicate details. The art of eyelashes. Eyelashes are the tiny hairs that frame the eye and add a lot of beauty and delicacy. They are not usually drawn as perfectly straight lines all sticking out neatly in the exact same direction. Real eyelashes tend to grow in small, slightly irregular clumps. They also curve gracefully outwards from the edges of the eyelids. The eyelashes on the upper eyelid are generally longer, thicker, and more numerous than the ones on the lower eyelid. They also curve noticeably upwards. Always start drawing them from the edge of the eyelid, not floating in the air above it. You should draw eyelashes with quick, confident, curved strokes of your pencil. Try to vary the length and the thickness of the individual lashes as you draw them. They should not all look exactly the same, because that would look unnatural. Some lashes are short and fine, while others are longer and a bit thicker. They also tend to crisscross over each other a little bit, especially near the outer corners of the eye. Don't draw them like a perfect, even fence or the teeth of a comb. Think of them as being a bit pleasantly messy and natural. The direction in which the eyelashes grow is very important for realism. On the upper eyelid, the lashes that are near the inner corner of the eye, close to the nose, tend to point slightly inwards, towards the nose. The lashes in the middle section of the upper lid point more directly upwards. Then, the lashes near the outer corner of the eye sweep outwards and slightly upwards, often fanning out beautifully. Lower lashes are typically much shorter, finer, and they curve gently downwards. They are also usually more sparse than the upper lashes with more space between them. Avoid making your eyelashes too dark or too thick unless that is a specific stylistic choice you are aiming for, like for a character with dramatic makeup. For most realistic drawings, they should look delicate and fine. Sometimes drawing just a few well-placed, suggestive lashes is much better and more effective than trying to draw too many individual ones, which can look clumpy. Remember that eyelashes, especially the longer upper ones, often cast tiny, subtle shadows on the eyeball itself. This small detail adds another lovely layer of realism to your finished eye drawing. Section 8. Oops! Common eye drawing mistakes. A very common mistake that beginners often make is drawing the eye too much like a perfect football shape, with very sharp pointed ends at both corners. Real eyes are generally more almond-shaped, and the inner corner where the tear duct is located is usually rounder and softer. Another frequent mistake is making the iris far too small within the eye, like a tiny little dot. This can make the eye look very surprised, scared, or even a bit crazy. The iris should be large enough so that it nearly touches, or is slightly covered by, both the top and bottom eyelids. Drawing the pupil perfectly in the exact center of the iris without considering how the eyelids affect it is another error seen quite often. Remember that the upper eyelid usually comes down and covers a little bit of the top portion of both the iris and the pupil. If the pupil is drawn fully visible and perfectly centered, with none of it covered, it can make the eye look unnatural, almost like a staring, intense eye. It is important to allow the eyelids to interact naturally with the iris and the pupil for a more relaxed and realistic appearance in your drawing. Many beginners also tend to draw eyelashes as straight, spiky lines, almost like the rays of a cartoon sun. Or they might draw all the eyelashes exactly the same length, the same thickness, and with the same spacing. As we learned, real eyelashes are gracefully curved, they vary quite a lot in length and thickness, and they grow in a slightly irregular natural pattern. Also, forgetting to show the thickness of the eyelids is a common oversight. Eyelids are not just single flat lines, they have dimension and form, which is very important to depict for realism. Another frequent mistake is not adding enough shading or highlights to the eye. Eyes that are drawn too flat without proper shading will lack life and dimension. The eyeball is a sphere, so it absolutely needs shading to make it look round and three-dimensional. The iris also has depth, texture, and subtle color variations that shading can bring out. Highlights are crucial because they make the eye look wet, reflective, and alive. Forgetting to draw the tear duct or making both eyes perfectly identical mirror images instead of just naturally symmetrical are other common things to watch out for. Section 9. Practice makes perfect. Your journey to realistic eyes. Learning to draw truly realistic eyes takes a good amount of time and a lot of dedicated practice. Please don't feel bad or discouraged if your first few attempts at drawing eyes are not exactly perfect. Every single artist, no matter how skilled they are now, went through this same learning process when they were starting out. The most important key to success is to keep trying and to not give up. Each time you sit down to draw an eye, you will learn something new from the experience. You will find that you get a little bit better with each drawing. You should try to look at real eyes as much as you possibly can. Look closely at your own eyes by using a mirror. Study photographs of different people's eyes in magazines or online. Notice all the small, subtle details. How does the light hit the surface of the eye and create highlights? How do the eyelids move and change shape when someone blinks or makes different expressions? How do expressions like happiness, sadness, or anger change the overall shape and appearance of the eyes? The more you observe, the better you will understand how to draw them accurately. Don't ever be afraid to make mistakes when you are drawing. Mistakes are a natural and very important part of the learning process for any skill. If you make a mistake in your drawing, try to take a moment to understand what went wrong and why. Then you can try to correct it or try again. Use your eraser. That's what it's there for. Sometimes you might even need to start over completely on a fresh piece of paper, and that is perfectly okay. Each attempt, even if it doesn't turn out how you hoped, is a valuable step forward on your art journey. Keep this guide handy and use it as a reference. You can look back at the steps and tips whenever you need a reminder or some guidance. Make it a habit to practice drawing eyes regularly. Try drawing eyes of different people, different ages, and showing different emotions and expressions. The more you practice these techniques, the more confident and skilled you will become. Soon, drawing realistic and expressive eyes will start to feel much more natural and intuitive to you. And you will be able to bring so much life and emotion to your portraits and character drawings. Good luck, and happy drawing!